So today I'll be focusing on really that last story. There was two sections to that reading. The first one is sort of a obscure reference to an event that occurred in the time or long before the time of Jesus about a tower falling on people. And so Jesus is asking them, well, was it right that they died? Were they more sinners than any other person? And, that has a crux as to the second part. It fits into the second part, but it's a little obscure about that reading because obviously at the time it meant something, a great deal to those people, those listeners. But I think the allusion, the story, the parable about the fig tree not bearing fruit is a far more accessible one. So we're going to talk about that today. So how far is too far when it comes to an infant crying in the night? When an infant cries in the night, the time has come to change and or to feed them. Okay, now a little extra crying, fumbling for the tape tabs on the diapers as she squiggles around on the changing pad and you are incredibly fatigued. The cries get louder and more insistent. She wants her bottle. You get to the kitchen and you wait for the bottle to warm. She cries as her little hands flail, wanting wildly to control the bottle on the way to her mouth. And she's okay for the time being, and finally all the formula's gone. All the burps have been coaxed out. And set back either in a cradle or in the bed, she seems to be heading for sleep. And then, suddenly and without warning, that oh-so-feared scrunched face appears again, and she begins to cry. You scramble to burp or to change the position, to wrap her tighter in a blanket, perhaps swaddling her. You get her up and you walk her, and each time only a slight respite until she begins to wail even yet again. It's late and you have a million things due in the morning. You're tired because you handled the midnight feeding too. Her cries continue and she's fussy. Let's ask this question. How far is too far? How far will you allow her to go before you allow your fatigue and your anxiety to rule your actions? I thought this was a very interesting thing. Because that's a totally separate thing, especially when an infant is involved in doing this because they're just not comfortable and they have no control over that. And you are there to take care of that. I saw, interestingly enough, on Facebook this morning, an article about Inuit children who live above the polar circle or whatever. They teach them how not to get angry. The strange thing, they don't scold their children, they don't embarrass them, they don't spank them. They teach them somehow to just move on, to move on beyond those kind of things, okay? And a woman who was writing this article was telling me about the story how the mother gave the kid some rocks and said, "Throw them at me." And the child would whip the rock at the parent really hard. And she wouldn't react. It was some way of teaching this idea of realizing that they can point out that something is not right, but they don't teach the child anger that we can do. And in this moment of feeding a child, you can get frustrated. You're tired. You can yell. Sometimes parents are moved to do even more. And it's a tragic thing. How far is too far? How long do we allow someone to invade our comfort until we react? Well, I used to be a bill collector at one time. Some of you know this. I'd gone through a down and out time in my life. I'd lost my previous family. I was previously married. I had lost the home I lived in, and I had lost my job. I felt pretty much a loser. But this collecting job came along, and they'd take anyone. even a loser like me. And I sat in this large room of cubicles separating me from the next collector. And all day long, we called our debtors. We called their neighbors. We called them at work. We tracked them down by sharing information with other creditors. We mailed them letters. We left notes at their door with their neighbor's aid. I even once tried to reach one of them at their church. That job was awful. I hated most of the times there. As we were hounding the debtors, we had a group of supervisors hounding us. We felt the exact same pressure exerted upon us. And all along, out went more bad credit through one door, and out went the bad credit collectors too, if we didn't perform. No mercy. No 1 or 2 or 3 year plans like that lucky fig tree that we read about in the scripture today. No mercy. Have you ever considered if you hounded others in what you did, whether it be a job or personal dealings in society? Did your work make sure the room you were in never had a merciful bone in it? How far is too far? How merciful or merciless can we be? How far is too far? Today's Luke passage has a person wanting to cut down a fig tree. It hasn't produced any fruit in 3 years. 3 years is a long time when you think of it, especially if you are a farmer dependent on the tree. 3 seasons is an eternity. 3 seasons can mean the difference between great fortune or going bust. And this one tree has not produced for 3 years. It's time to cut it down and to replace it with a new one. Now the gardener steps in and pleads for the tree's sake. He says he'll nurture it. He'll give it extra special treatment, lots of manure to feed its roots. Let it be, he tells the owner. Give it another chance. Who are you in this story? Are you the practical one, the one who decided to cut your losses, to distance yourself from the non-productive tree? Or are you the one who steps in on behalf of that low-producing or no-producing tree? I ask this because I want us all to ask the question, how far is too far? How far can someone go before you give up on them? Now, at the same time, another reading was offered for today. It was from the book of Isaiah. And there are some words in there. It says, "Ho, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And you that have no money, come. Buy and eat, even with no money. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread?" Isaiah speaks. It's a very merciful statement, don't you believe? This writer in Isaiah tells us that replenishment will be offered to the destitute, those who carry no more credit, those who have cried themselves out. They will be allowed to receive the food which will fill them beyond any other food. And so, therefore, nothing is too far, according to that passage. Why? Because in Isaiah it says, "For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." We often run things like businesses that often have no business being run as a business. Sometimes churches are done so. We interject corporate models and behaviors into community and communal actions. But we are told on a regular basis of the mercy which we will receive from our parent in heaven. There are some churches, it's all about, a bottom line. If somebody's not tithing, or if not even just giving, if they're not tithing, they are run out of the church, Tithing, 10% of your income, okay? They have to actually show sometimes their tax papers so that they can prove they're actually giving enough of them. So these are the kind of things that sometimes can go on. So I remind you, we're told on a regular basis of the mercy which we will receive from our parent in heaven. We ask for and we receive forgiveness from the Christ each time we have communion, whether we come forward and receive it in intinction, or whether the ushers bring it to you, the deacons bring it to you. And our God continues to remind us that we are to treat others then as we have been treated. You're a faithful person, be honest. What have you done, though, you have received forgiveness? Have you come to the waters to receive replenishment, and yet you lie in wait of others who are more tender or vulnerable? Is there any stalking going on in your business dealings or in your personal dealings? It's a fair question to ask, because, friends, we all do it. Remember I was talking to the kids about I can get myself involved in eating, the Cheerios and thinking that it's taking care of me and making me feel better. And eventually I take them all in. And in the end, I feel awful, right? We all can fall into that. We're not all perfect. The people in AA have the saying, because the program is really smart. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. They accept that they don't always get it right. Not that they're drinking all the time, but they make mistakes in their life. And so they learn how to forgive themselves by taking care of the business rather than shoving it aside. They seek forgiveness. They give forgiveness so that they don't drink again. Okay? So that's the idea. We're all subject to making these mistakes. So Jesus, that one, had to die, that one precious one, in order that the rest of us could live. You see, in Lent, we are counting the days until Christ's death. And as Christians, we recall that he paid a price for us. Not that he took away all sin, not that he ended wrongdoing, not that he made everything right. It's that he was precious, we are told, by God in God's sight. God's, as tradition tells us, God's only begotten Son. And yet, he still died. Some people call that folly. It's like, doesn't make any damn sense. How on earth could someone dying be a victory? Well, it's again the same idea that is instituted then in the rooms of AA. It's not about this perfection, that Jesus was capable of fending off everything and did fend off everything. It's not about that. It's not about him being with an armor that is no one can pierce. It's not about that. It's about the fact that we are all human, and so is he. It's that our armor can be pierced, that we can pierce other people's armor, that things happen in ways that are maybe even we think unforgivable, but in the end, honestly, they really are. He paid the price for us in the example of life and death struggles. Are we going to brush that off and live a predatory life? When others are in need of getting to the water of forgiveness, will we guard the path and block their approach? When others come to the water as we have come, like when we receive communion each month, Will we lie in wait? The scripture tells us, "Oh, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters." The invitation is given to all. There is no limited supply. We don't have to guard the waters. Everyone has been welcomed. Not just me, not just you, but everybody. So as we continue this journey of life, we need to remember that this is a place of reconciliation, the place of forgiveness, the place where the thirsty have been called. And it is not a place where we can put restrictions upon. All are welcome. But you know what? That's okay. But I would rather us put a sign up out in front that we'll come to you. You don't have to ask for forgiveness. We're going to go to you and show what it's like. That's the way to build our congregation, to build God's great commission. So friends, I pray that you know that this fig tree, this gardener told the owner, give it another try. That you are included in there. And I pray that we include others as well. So with that in mind, let's sing our next hymn,